that experience and how that helped you make the actual Olympic team in 2008.
Well, yeah, I mean, my original focus when I moved to the Hansons out in Detroit was like the 5K and 10K. I wanted to see how fast I could get at those. And, you know, the first year out there, I PR'd in the 10K. I had run 28:58 in college. I ran 28:36 the first year out. You know, things are going great. Year after that, I ran 28:42. And the year after that, I ran 28:57 or so. So it's kind of going the wrong direction in the 10K. But at the same time, my mileage was going through the roof. I was nailing workouts that I would have never dreamed possible before, you know, like 6-mile tempos at sub 5-minute pace and stuff like that. So I kind of saw that, you know, the distance was kind of going up. I was getting stronger. My speed was kind of going one way, but my strength was going the right way. And so that sort of convinced me in 2004 to try to qualify for the Olympic trials then, and then run those trials and see what I could do. And we took a group of about 6 or 8 guys to Chicago that year. Just in the sole goal was to qualify for the Olympic trials. That was run 2:22 at that time. That's what you had to run the race. And we had a couple guys that were pretty fit at the time, and Kevin and Keith told us that at 20 miles, if we were feeling good, we could take off and try to break 2:20. And that's what I did at Chicago. I you know, did my duty sort of through 20 miles for the rest of the group. We were right on pace. Me and another guy took off and laid it down a little bit. I ended up running, I think I was 2:19:59 chip time and 2:20:01 gun time or something like that. So there was some controversy there because sub 2:20 you get your way paid. And
the Olympic trials.
So there was so
did you get your way paid in the Olympic trials?
Yeah, I did. Well, I mean, you know, I think that the Hansons and Brooks were gonna, you know, pay my way either way, but there was a little of a stink out there about it. But so anyhow, 2004. That was October 2003. January 2004 is the Olympic trials in Birmingham, Alabama. And you know, the workouts and so forth are just going great. I'm nailing workouts. I'm hitting stuff that I had never dreamed possible before. Again, you know, things are just falling into place. And I go in as a 2:19 high, you know, 2:20 marathoner, and we know that it's probably going to take a 2:12 or faster to make the team. And so Trent Briney, Clint Viren, and I sort of had the goal going in. 2:12 is our goal. You know, we're gonna go after that, see what happens. It's our first time. Well, it was Clint's second time, but our first time. And the agreement was, you know, we were going to go out at right around a 5:02 to 5:04 pace and try to stick with that the whole way. And we woke up that morning. It was a pretty nasty wind. It was about 45 degrees, 50 degrees, something like that. Kind of cold, cloudy. You know, just kind of a nasty conditions. And we also had a 10-mile straight stretch right into town, directly into the wind. So we were kind of waffling back and forth as to what we ought to do, and you know, the gun went off, and I'm you know, kind of feeling it out, seeing what's going to happen. We went through the first 2 miles in 11:20 or something like that, super slow. I mean,
so well slower, way slower than what you had planned to do. 5:02.
And at that point, I just sort of, you know, made the decision to go after it, and I took off, and you know, at one point, I know I had a minute and 40-some second lead, and I just got really excited. I saw my parents were there. I saw them on the sideline. You know, my mom and dad are like, "You're going to win this," you know. And I knew it was early, but you know, it was my second marathon, so I was pretty green, you know, to the whole experience. And you know, I kept doing these. We did the criterium course, kept looping around, and in you know, in my excitement, I was totally skipping my bottles of Gatorade and stuff, and but I was feeling great. You know, I was like, "Wow, who needs Gatorade in this marathon?" And you know, I was in hindsight. I mean, I know I went out. I think I could have handled that 5:02 per mile pace the whole way through had I grabbed my Gatorade, but I cheated it down. I remember running a couple 4:51s, 4:53s in there, and I just sort of cooked my goose. 22 miles, I hit the wall. Like, I mean, it was the thickest brick wall I've ever hit in my life, and I don't remember anything after that. I woke up in the medical tent afterward with an IV in my arm. So, you know, it was sort of a bad experience in one hand. I still ended up, I think I was 12th or 13th place, so it wasn't a bad race. I PR'd by 4 minutes or so, even with pretty much walking the last 4 miles. But it taught me something that really helped me in the 2008 trials, and that's to stick to your plan, to get your bottles, and I think that played a major major factor in my making the team then in New York the very next time.
And that's pretty much advice that any marathoner can really follow. I mean, it's pretty simple. Just take your fluids and
follow the plan.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you're only capable of X time, and the most efficient way to run that time is the most even splits that you can get the whole way through. Kevin and Keith Hansen have constantly beat into us that every world record over 5K has been set by a negative split. So that's obviously the best way, the most efficient way to run the race. So that's what we try to do, and that's what that applies to anybody out there, whether you're trying to qualify for Boston or break 5 hours in the marathon, whatever.
So talk about, you have a good race in 2004, but then you make the decision to continue to train in 2008, and then it culminates with you making the team in New York in 2007, and then eventually running the marathon in 2008. Talk about that experience, and definitely New York. I'd be really curious to know your thoughts on the New York City Marathon.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, like I said before, I've lucked out in my running career in that it's always been sort of right there for me to grasp, and it's always been sort of that carrot dangling. So that 2004 experience, it remotivated me as well. So not only did it teach me a lot about marathoning, but it showed me that, hey, I was there. I only had 4 more miles to go. This is something that's very within my grasp. So that motivated me. In 2007 at the New York Marathon, we've got the trials in Central Park. Very hilly course. I consider myself a strength runner, so that I consider that to be to my benefit, was the rolling hills and so forth. And just trained thinking about nothing but that race the next 4 years. And we lined up Rockefeller Center that morning, and I knew what I had to do, and I knew what I wanted to do. I just wanted to run that 5 flat pace. We went out at about 11 minutes for the first 2 miles again.
Again slow.
Excessively slow, and I kind of took the race right there and took off and ran my 5-minute pace, and everybody was content to sort of go with me for the first half mile, or for the first half marathon or so, and then Ryan Hall just took off with Dathan, Dan Brown, Alan or Abdi, and Meb. They all kind of took off and started running 4:45s, and at that point it was very tempting for me to try to hang on to that, but in the back of my mind that experience in 2004 kind of kept me from doing that. So. I just stuck to my pace, and I was in 8th, 9th place at one point, starting to worry a little bit, getting a little concerned, and then I saw a guy up ahead of me, and it was Abdi. Went by him, and just sort of climbed the ladder up to 3rd place. Took over 3rd place with about 4 or 5 miles to go, and never looked back. I just tried to tunnel vision, focus on getting to the finish as fast as possible, and hopefully nobody caught me from behind. And
I saw the video. You did look back one time in the last 100 meters or so.
Well, it wasn't over till it was over. That's for sure. I mean, even 100 meters to go, I still wasn't sure. I mean, it was something that I had thought about every day for the last 4 years, and I certainly didn't want to see it getting taken from me in the last
second. He had a former world record holder on his tail who was in 4th place in Khalid Kanuchi, so I don't think you take it for granted at all. You got to keep running hard.
I watched Khalid one year at the Chicago Marathon close his last mile in 4:32, and it's a gradual uphill the last mile at Chicago, and so I knew that if he was there with a mile to go, he was probably going to. I don't think I would have been able to run a 4:32.
Right. So what was that like when you make the team? I mean, it just must have been extremely emotional, and you had your wife and kid there at the time. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, it was great. I mean, New York Roadrunners puts on an amazing show, up there with the New York Marathon, and the trials were no different. It was just a huge production, and they treated us like royalty for the next couple days, and. Then the trip to Beijing was great. I mean, we all sort of piled on a 747 together, the whole team, whether, there's swimmers and badminton guys, and, everybody on the team was on, I think, 1 or 2 different planes.
Right.
And we got over there, and, I mean, it was great. The whole experience was just top-notch. Beijing really went all out. They had a lot riding on it. I know that the media sort of played it up that, that was Beijing the right choice and stuff? And I think they really put the extra effort in because of that. I mean, they really cleaned everything up, and everything was great.
I remember hearing a lot of stuff about like the air quality out there, and you know, obviously the weather was a factor. Why don't you tell us about the air quality and the weather and how that affected the way the marathon played out? Yeah,
the air quality was pretty nasty in the weeks leading up to the marathon, but the morning of the marathon it was like today. I mean, it was bright, you know, clear. It was warm. We expected in the 90s, and I think it was 70, 75 on the start. So it was a little less than what we thought it was going to be. But it was still pretty warm. But the pollution was not a factor at all the morning of the race.
So then that affects your training. Then if you have a potential to run in 90-degree heat, then you're going to spend quite a deal of your training time training in that kind of condition as well.
Yeah. My first couple weeks of just the easy mileage runs in Michigan, you know, it was still pretty cool there in June or so, or May,
right.
And so I wore a heavy cotton sweatshirt and sweatpants, you know, for a little while, just on the easy stuff. And then when we'd work out, I'd wear like a long sleeve technical T-shirt just to get a little more heat. And then about 2 weeks before the Olympics, we went down to Florida and trained there in the heat. And there we got the 95s that we needed.
Nice. Whereabouts in Florida?
Orlando area.
Yeah,
right around Disney.
Did you ever do anything else besides like the run? Like for example, I ran the 2007 Disney Marathon, and it was the same kind of deal. It was like 70 with really high humidity at the start of the race, and then by the end of the race, it was up in the high 80s, and just like, you know, you completely lose your time running those kinds of conditions. So I was getting a massage down there, and she was like, "You should try this stuff, Bikram yoga. We're doing like yoga in like a 105-degree room." Have you ever heard of that or tried anything like that at all?
I've never tried it, but I've heard. I mean, I'm definitely. I think everybody's more flexible after they've run on a hot day than they are, you know, waking up on a cold morning for sure. And you know, I honestly think it's whatever you think helps. I always tell a story sometimes when I'm talking to groups and stuff. Is I was out to Red Lobster with my parents one time for dinner, and I forgot to do my push-ups for the day. I did my push-ups every day religiously, no matter what. And I excused myself from the table, went into the Red Lobster bathroom, cranked out my 75 push-ups on the bathroom floor, washed my hands, and went back out to dinner. You know, did that? You know, was that one day what did it? Probably not, but you know, mentally it definitely helps. So I think anything you can do, whether it be nutrition, push-ups, stretching, yoga, anything is going to help your running in the long run, whether it be physical or mental. Because
running is such a mental sport.
It
really is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you feel that, you know, the mentality probably comes in like every facet of the race. I mean, from, like you said, at the start of the race, when you're, you know, running a little bit slower than you want to, but sticking with your plan, when you see those guys running the 4:45s. Mm-hmm. I mean, how do you know what kind of, like you were saying, like in the 04 race, you had like a minute 48 lead. I mean, if you're the front runner, like way in front, like how far, do you have people in the crowd that tell you how big of a lead you have, or
yeah, I did.
How do you know?
We had our coaches out there, and they gave me an idea of how far ahead I was. Now at the Olympic trials in 2007 at New York, we had guys, the top 10 guys or so had guys on bicycles riding next to them, telling them what position they were. Right. So everybody sort of had the same advantage in that respect, where, you know, there wasn't one guy getting information that other guys weren't. But.
All right, well, real quickly, we have a couple minutes left here. Just some simple questions, like, you know, what's your favorite race that you've run? And
the Olympic trials, just for overall, but as far as atmosphere and so forth, probably the Boston Marathon, just because it starts out in sort of, you know, in the small town, and it just builds and builds as you get closer.
It's all about Boston, isn't it, Chris?
Right, it is. That is one of my favorite races.
You got to come run the Marine Corps Marathon.
I'd like to. I wish I would have, you know, before I totally retire. But it's a good one.
Well, maybe we can you know, talk a little bit about on the next segment about maybe his Beijing experience and maybe some future plans, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, Brian's gonna stay and join us for another show here, so we'll have plenty more to talk about you here over the next half an hour. We're looking forward to getting into that segment too, where we'll be able to get into maybe some more training tips that will benefit some of the runners out there that might be watching, something for more of the middle of the pack runners, Chris.
Yeah, we've got a Crystal City Twilight race tonight, and you know, we want to talk about. We touched on last show about how, you know, you handle yourself in the heat, and you know, we can get some tips from Brian from that as well, because it's been one of the hottest summers on record here in DC, and probably, you know, where he is in Michigan and everywhere else.
I'm sure he knows all about training for Beijing. Brian, thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's been great having you. We'll do it again here in a little bit.
Appreciate it.
And we'll have that on Facebook for everybody to watch. Thanks for coming on. Chris will say goodbye to everybody. Hey, everybody, thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next episode of Gotta Get Running. Bye-bye, everybody.